Hey everybody, this video is a greatest hits video of the most common questions I get about cold training. I've been training people in the cold for years now. I've trained thousands of people, and over the years I get a lot of the same questions and some really good questions that we put together in a single video. If you want to see the full videos, you can take a look at the list below. All of the original videos are there, but this is kind of like the best parts of each video if you want to take a look at those. I also want to thank MagicMind for sponsoring this video. MagicMind is an all-natural nootropic blend that I take every day. I haven't taken my shot of MagicMind yet, but I just want to say cheers to you for looking to improve yourself in really powerful ways, whether it's in the cold, whether it's in the heat, whether it's with better nutrition, exercise, breath work, any of these things that the channel is all about. So I just want to say cheers to you with my MagicMind. To your health. Now let's get on with this video.
Is it okay to get into like a sauna or steam room or hot shower or a hot tub or something like that after doing a cold exposure, just in the hopes that, hey, I can feel warm again? Okay, so this is a common question. And the answer is that, first of all, it's not like it's going to harm you to get into like a sauna or a hot shower after your cold exposure. However, it could actually make you feel colder, strangely enough. It just depends on how extreme of a cold exposure you got into. But I've seen and I've felt shivers while sitting in a hot tub. And the reason for that is when you get into an ice bath or any kind of cold exposure, your skin has an enormous amount of capillaries, and it will close these capillaries in order to prevent the cold from getting into your circulation. So it closes up all these little capillaries on the extremities. And that's awesome. We're working out that circulatory system that we don't normally work out. But it's holding at the very tips of all of these little capillaries, it's holding just a little bit of cooled blood, super cooled blood. And when your hypothalamus realizes it's no longer in the cold, it will slowly or quickly open those capillaries up. The cold blood will go to your core, and that's where it's really sometimes difficult to process, but we have to process that cold blood. Am I building a tolerance which will make it necessary for me to continue to get colder and stay in longer? And so in order to get the same results, do I have to push myself harder and harder into the cold? And the answer to that is no. You don't build a tolerance to the cold when it comes to the benefits of the cold. So for instance, the classic thing is norepinephrine. Norepinephrine it's a hormone, it's a chemical in your brain. It does an enormous amount of things, but norepinephrine is something that is probably the most pronounced change that happens in your body. You get enormous amounts of norepinephrine. And here's the thing, from all my research, I've been able to determine, and it's been shown in research, that you don't develop a tolerance when it comes to, you get the same shot every single time. And that's if, let's suppose you take a 1 minute cold shower, you're going to get exactly the same amount of norepinephrine on your first time as you would get on your 50th or 1000th time to take that 1 minute cold shower in the same temperature. You don't build a tolerance to that. However, your body does become more adapted and it's more capable of handling cold. So if you get the same amount of norepinephrine for 1 minute of a cold shower of maybe 60 degrees Fahrenheit, just imagine what you would get if you had 2 minutes at that same temperature. You'd get double that. And then if you go colder, you get a bigger spike of norepinephrine. And then if you go colder and longer, you get a bigger spike and you get it more. And so basically what you get by progressing in the cold are added benefits. You get more benefits. And the beauty is your body is starting to, if you do it right, okay, there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. And that's why I recommend my ebook, because I don't want people to go out there and kill themselves.
Let's talk about 3 things that you should never do before cold training. The first thing you should never do before cold training is eat a large meal. When you eat a large meal, your body is trying to digest that. The blood circulation in your body is going to change, and that's going to confuse your body whenever you go out into the cold. It'll also give you a greater chance of having afterdrop and possibly hypothermia. The second thing you want to avoid is heavy caffeine. I'm not saying you can't have a cup of coffee or just a little something to get you going, but if you over caffeinate, you're going to experience vasoconstriction across all of your body, and that will make it seem colder. The other thing that caffeine does is it keeps us from calming down. And one of the biggest things we're trying to accomplish in the cold is calming down in the face of this stressor. Lastly, you want to avoid alcohol or drugs. This hurts your ability to feel how cold you actually are, and it can lead you to overextending yourself in the cold. You should not do cold exposures when you've come down with a cold or a flu. I've got a cold, I've got a flu, I got a sore throat, or whatever it is. Then the smart thing to do is to cease all things that stress you. Cease everything that costs energy, because what you want is to allow your body to spend all of its energy fighting the virus or the bacteria or the intruder of whatever kind it is. If you're going to get into an ice bath, well, yeah, you don't really need to be in the ice bath that long to get the effect, because you're getting a lot of intensity. However, if you're not getting that kind of intensity, then you would probably be going for something more like volume, so volume training. So for instance, it's the difference between sprinting and jogging, or powerlifting and lifting high reps. You're trying to get a similar result using 2 different aspects of the training. So basically, if you're taking cold showers, now, as you can see behind me, it is springtime in the Midwest. So if you're taking cold showers in the Midwest right now, those cold showers are nowhere close to as cold as they were just a month or 2 ago. So you're probably going to need to take a longer cold shower if that's the only thing you've got. Overall, it goes back to the research that's been done on cold exposure training that basically talks about the release of norepinephrine in the brain. And norepinephrine that's the hormone / neurotransmitter that is the number 1 chemical that we can trace to cold exposure training. And basically, it shows that it will respond to duration, or it will respond to intensity. And basically, the more intense and the longer you spend in that cold, the more norepinephrine your body's going to produce. When is the best time to take an ice bath or let's say cold shower? Because this is what most people ask me about. Most people especially ask me because this is the stage they're in. They're in the cold shower stage. It's a time whenever, hey, I am trying to get into this cold thing and I'm trying to figure out the whole routine of it all. According to research, the best thing to help you sleep as far as showering goes is to take a hot shower before you go to bed. And the reason for that is that your hypothalamus will read that heat, and then it will actually overcompensate in some way by basically cooling your body temperature, which makes it easier for you to go to sleep at night. I started off with taking cold showers in the evening just because of, I kind of left it to the last thing to do in the day. But I found that it cleared my mind, and I believe it helps me sleep better as a result of that. Is there a benefit of doing a cold exposure in the early parts of the day? Yes, there is, okay? One of the biggest benefits of doing a cold exposure in the early parts of the day is that cold exposure produces norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is a very powerful anti-inflammatory, but it's also been shown to be responsible for helping, it aids and enhances your ability to learn and your ability to focus and pay attention. So if for most of us, that's what we need in the morning. We're groggy, maybe you're like me, you have kids and maybe they were up keeping you up all last night and you're like, oh my God, So a cold shower in the morning is actually really beneficial. It's a phenomenon that happens where there is twitching in an artery that would normally give you blood to a certain area of your body, but because this twitching, it causes the artery to close up and to contract, and you don't get any blood there. And that's why your fingers or your toes or your parts of your feet, parts of your ears, whatever, that's why they will turn white. They don't get any blood, and so they're just it's completely shunted off. Raynaud syndrome, just to give you a little background on it, there's two kinds of Raynaud syndrome. There's primary Raynaud syndrome, and that's where it just kind of happens. There's no real cause, or it's not like you catch this thing from another person. It just kind of happens. And it's not uncommon that a person will have Raynaud syndrome. The other kind of Raynaud syndrome is secondary Raynaud syndrome. And this is, hence the name, it's a secondary, it's kind of a symptom of an underlying cause. And typically, if you get Raynaud syndrome early on in life, maybe between the ages of like 10 and even 30, it's likely, and I'm not a doctor here, right? But it's likely that you're getting primary Raynaud syndrome and not secondary. But it's possible, especially as you get older, maybe in your 20s or 30s too, just think about this. It's possible that Raynaud syndrome is being caused by an underlying problem. And so it may be a good reason to go get checked out. Just get 100% sure that there's nothing giving you problems. Sometimes it's lupus, sometimes it's other rheumatoid type of problems, sometimes it's inflammation. There are different causes, and again, I'm not going to go through all the possibilities, and you really should talk to your doctor if you believe that you have secondary Raynaud syndrome. Traditional advice is to avoid the cold, avoid the thing that makes the problem happen. And so that's what most people do. Now, I have talked to people, and I know people personally who have, they've gone the other way with it. They've said, well, I'm going to slowly acclimate myself, and I'm going to train the parts of my body that suffer from Raynaud syndrome, and I will basically, through hormesis or through just basically causing stress to that area, and with using the cold, I'm going to cause a change. I'm going to cause my body to adapt. And I've talked to some people who have had success with that. There's no guarantees that would happen, but I just want to relay that to you. If you have Raynaud syndrome, it is something that I would be careful, especially whenever you're going to maybe do outdoor exposures. But typically, the average person with primary Raynaud syndrome, you can take cold showers, you can do ice bathing. It's just that you have this extra thing you do need to be mindful of. And if you have it, from what I've been told, whenever it happens to you, it can be sort of painful. So just be aware of that there can be a pins and needles type of an effect. And whenever the blood goes back to that area, it can be kind of painful too. So just something to be aware of.
After exiting the water, I feel on the verge of shivering for the next 20 to 30 or 10 to 20 minutes, unless I heat my car up or do something really aggressive, some really aggressive exercise or something like that. So his question is, okay, should I do this aggressive movement to warm my body up immediately before you get into the cold, and also while you're in the cold? You want to look at this task as something that's very doable. You want to have absolute conviction. You can do this. You not only can I do this, but I'm going to do this. But you don't want to put yourself in a state of fight or flight. You want to be in a state of calm going into this as much as possible. Okay, I understand getting into an ice bath is not typically something people would maybe see as a relaxing thing. So if you are shivering in the water, it is bad. That means you've stayed too long in the water. Get out. You should have gotten out a long time ago. Okay, if you are shivering in the cold exposure, if you wait until you feel cold to get out of the ice bath or out of the cold shower or out of the pool or whatever, then you most likely are about to experience what we know as afterdrop.
In my opinion, whenever you are completely submerged in a temperature, it's easier for some reason to adapt to it. Whenever there's just a part of you that is cold and then the rest of you is not as cold, I think, I don't know, there's just something about it. It almost just feels annoying that just part of you is cold, as opposed to everything's cold. I'm absolutely tuning in. So I think there's a little bit of that.
The other thing is, in a cold shower situation, you've got continuous water, and so whatever temperature that cold shower might be, like in the wintertime, I like cold showers a lot, because in the wintertime, I go outside, I have open air, and then and the water in the shower is so cold, a lot of times I'll take advantage of that as well. So whenever you have a shower, it's that temperature continuously. In an ice bath, if you've taken an ice bath before, you may or may not realize it, but there does form a slightly warm layer, and we're not talking about it's very warm, but it's slightly warm layer of water that is around your skin, because you are warming the water. You are warming it with your skin, and that, you can enhance a cold experience of that kind, like an ice bath, by rocking back and forth, by swishing around. Laird Hamilton apparently has an ice bath contraption where the water is freezing temperatures, but it's constantly moving. When that happens, it's just like in the cold shower. You're getting a constant temperature against the skin, as opposed to the slight warmth that your body will create and build around you with that little bit of water that surrounds your body. So I encourage you, after you've gotten used to cold showers for a while, to just experiment with putting your head under the cold water. Experiment maybe with your face. You can experiment with what's called the mammalian dive reflex. Whenever you put that water right on your face here, notice how long you can hold your breath. This is a kind of an interesting thing it's kind of an evolutionary throwover that we have this ability to hold our breath more whenever we have the feeling of water on our face. And the theory is that it had to do with whenever we as mammals would dive underwater for food and things like that, we needed to hold our breath longer. So it's kind of a cool thing to mess around with, or just to kind of experiment with. And get cold all over, that's fine. There is a danger to extreme cold exposure on your head, though. And this is generally with extreme cold on your head, and it's probably not something most people are ever going to face in the shower. But here's the deal. Our heads, most of our body, we have enormous amount of, vascular, we got a lot of meat between the outside world, like the cold, and our internal organs. And that is great because it insulates us and it keeps us safe, and it keeps us from having that extreme vasoconstriction all the way through. And it keeps our internal organs functioning. Our head doesn't necessarily have that. It's pretty much, we don't have a whole lot of room between this side of our brain, of the skull, and the other side. So we don't have as much insulation, which is why if a person were to go under extremely cold water, and I'm talking like freezing cold, it's possible that you might pass out, you might lose consciousness. Bad things can happen. However, typically a cold shower is not going to get that cold. However, it could be cold enough that you're really surprised and oh my God, and you fall backwards or whatever, So make sure you're really calm your breath whenever you go under there, and don't feel like you have to master the head exposure with your very first time. Don't feel like you have to keep your head under there for a long period of time. And of course, I'm going to turn it on, and I'm not going to, you can start, maybe if you wanted to start over here, and then ease your way to the cold, but eventually you're going to get straight up to the cold. And what I've got here, let's see here if you can see that. This right here is my laser device. And basically, you can get these online. I got this for like $10. You might find a little bit more expensive one now and then, but they're usually pretty cheap. I wouldn't spend more than $25 or $30 for a laser thermometer, but you're going to want a laser thermometer. Now, one of the things, and why is that? Okay, so why is that? The biggest reason, I'm going to say a little water there. The biggest reason you're going to want a laser thermometer is to test the surface temperature. You're going to notice that is much faster, especially whenever it comes to moving water. You want to know approximately what is that water temperature. Another thing to think about is if you have the kind that needs to be submerged in water, it may not really work very well for a shower. It could do just fine, but you're going to know with higher precision with a laser thermometer.